This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. Good morning, I'm John Trout. It's Tuesday, March 12th, 2024. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
President Biden pouncing on comments by Donald Trump on entitlements as he releases his budget proposals for next year. I'm John Stolnis in Washington.
More politicians speaking out against TikTok.
And I consider Facebook to be an enemy of the people.
I'm Clayton Neville.
Lisa Dwyer reports that Florida settles a lawsuit that challenged the so-called Don't Say Gay law.
Donald Trump has asked for a delay in the New York hush money trial. I'm Shelley Adler.
On Wall Street, it's all about the latest inflation read this morning, the Consumer Price Index for February. I'm Jessica Ettinger.
A Texas judge makes it harder for people to unionize. Donna Warder will have that story.
A group of bipartisan lawmakers are trying to save AM radio. I'm Haya Panjwani.
All ahead on America in the Morning. The White House releases their budget proposal for fiscal year 2025, with President Biden stumping for his policy proposals and hitting Donald Trump for comments he made about entitlements. Our John Stolnis is in Washington.
Speaking in Manchester, New Hampshire, the president explaining his $7.3 trillion plan that would provide $4.7 billion for border security, provide new tax credits for first-time homebuyers, and lower the cost of prescription drugs.
I want to cap the cost of insulin at $35 for every American. I promise nobody, well, as long as I'm president, who earns less than $400,000, it's a lot more than I ever made, will pay an additional penny in federal taxes. Nobody, not a single cent. Nobody will pay a single penny more. And they haven't thus far. Folks, it's about fundamental fairness.
The president's plan calls for a $2,000 cap on drug costs for all Americans and would make permanent some protections in Obamacare. Fox Business analyst Charles Payne ripping Biden's budget as more handouts the nation can't afford.
This is a budget that says we don't believe in what America was built on, capitalism. We do not believe in capitalism. This is a war against capitalism.
Biden says deficits would be cut by $3 trillion under his plan, thanks to raising taxes on corporations and a minimum 25% tax on people worth more than $100 million.
But I'm a capitalist, man. Make all the money you want. Just begin to pay your fair share of taxes.
President Biden claims Donald Trump wants to continue favoring the wealthy if he's reelected.
You really think the wealthy and big corporations need another $2 trillion tax breaks? Because that's what he wants to do. His tax cut's about to expire, and he wants to add another $2 trillion tax cut.
Earlier in the day, Trump seemed to indicate that he's open to making entitlement cuts if he's reelected, speaking on CNBC.
There is a lot you can do in terms of entitlements, in terms of cutting, and in terms of also the theft and the bad management of entitlements, tremendous bad management of entitlements. There's tremendous amounts of things and numbers of things you can do.
The bottom line is he's still at it. I'm never going to allow that to happen. I won't cut Social Security. I won't cut Medicare. Instead of cutting Medicare and give tax breaks to the wealthy, I will protect and strengthen Social Security and Medicare and make the wealthy begin to pay their fair share.
The Biden budget has no chance of passing the House or Senate, but it provides a blueprint for his spending priorities during this election season. John Stolnis, Washington.
Former President Trump and other politicians are chiming in over concerns surrounding TikTok. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports some believe the popular app to be a national security threat.
Former President Donald Trump seemingly distancing himself from a proposed ban on apps like TikTok, owned by the Chinese company ByteDance. Some have voiced concern about information sharing with China, while others are worried about the content of the app itself.
Frankly, there are a lot of people on TikTok that love it. There are a lot of young kids on TikTok who will go crazy without it. There are a lot of users. There's a lot of good, and there's a lot of bad with TikTok.
The former president and current Republican frontrunner in the race for the presidency told CNBC Squawk Box that he could have had a TikTok ban while in office.
I said, you know what, but I'll leave it up to you. I didn't push him too hard because, let them do their own research and development, and they decided not to do it. But as you know, I was at the point where I could have gotten it done if I wanted to. They ultimately usually fail. They are extremely political, and they're extremely subject to people called lobbyists who happen to be very, very talented, very good, and very rich. I could have banned TikTok.
Right now, Trump has one major issue with a potential TikTok ban.
The thing I don't like is that without TikTok, you can make Facebook bigger. And I consider Facebook to be an enemy of the people.
This week, House lawmakers will debate a bill that pushes a TikTok ban if the Chinese parent company doesn't agree to sell it. Ahead of the hearing, the app pushed a notification urging users to speak out against the bill. Republican House Energy and Commerce Chair Kathy McMorris Rogers said, if anything, the organized calling campaign, quote, only exposed the degree in which TikTok can manipulate and target a message. I'm Clayton Neville.
Don't Say Gay bill settlement in Florida. We'll have that story and more when America in the Morning continues after these messages. Welcome back. This is America in the Morning. How far will snow or rain reach into the west today? Here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
A storm that started in the northwest yesterday afternoon will continue its trek eastward through the region. There will be widespread rain and snow from northern California into Washington and eastward through Nevada into Utah and then northward to Idaho and western Montana. This will continue to spread snow through the Rockies with showers in the valleys. There could even be a few showers in northern Arizona and New Mexico. Several inches of snow will fall across the Cascades in Washington and Oregon, as well as the central and northern Rockies by tomorrow morning. Otherwise, a large portion of the country is looking at quieter weather today. There will be the lingering storm off the northeast coast, causing a few rain and snow showers in New England, mainly this morning. Very strong winds through Maine into New Hampshire. Despite that storm, the afternoon temperatures will still be 5 to 10 degrees above their historical average, although winds will make it feel much colder. Farther south through the eastern Great Lakes into the mid-Atlantic, it will be a warmer day by quite a bit with less wind. Across the northeast, that will make it feel even milder. Highs through the area will be in the 50s in much of New York and then into the 60s and 70s from Michigan and Ohio into Virginia and 70s and 80s across the southeast. Many of these locations will be 5 to 15 degrees above their historical average. Sunshine, we're looking at a very nice afternoon. That trend started in the plains yesterday and will continue today. We're not looking at any records necessarily today, but we'll see temperatures still in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and that will still be above the historical average by 15 to 25 degrees. That will be from eastern Montana into the Dakotas, Nebraska, Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin. And even in the southern plains, we're looking at a very warm afternoon by 5 to 15 degrees with highs in the 70s and 80s. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
Remember, you can follow us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. Students and teachers can discuss sexual orientation and gender identity in Florida classrooms under a new Don't Say Gay bill legal settlement. Correspondent Lisa Dwyer reports.
Students and teachers will be able to speak freely about sexual orientation and gender identity in Florida classrooms, provided it is not part of instruction. That's according to a settlement reached between Florida education officials and civil rights attorneys who had challenged a Florida state law which critics dubbed Don't Say Gay. The settlement clarifies what is allowed in Florida classrooms following passage 2 years ago of the law prohibiting instruction on sexual orientation and gender identity in early grades. Opponents said the law created confusion about whether teachers could identify themselves as LGBTQ. Governor Ron DeSantis' office describes the settlement as a win since the law itself remains intact. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
Former President Trump is seeking to derail the start of his first criminal trial just 2 weeks out from when it's scheduled to begin, asserting a presidential immunity defense. Correspondent Shelley Adler reports that the Supreme Court will be taking up that claim in a hearing next month.
GOP presidential candidate Donald Trump wants to delay his March 25th hush money trial until the Supreme Court rules on the presidential immunity claims he raised in another of his criminal cases. Lawyers for the former president have asked Manhattan Judge Juan Merchan to adjourn the New York criminal trial indefinitely until Trump's immunity claim in his election interference case is resolved. The Supreme Court is scheduled to hear arguments in that case April 25th, which is a month after the scheduled start of jury selection in the hush money case. I'm Shelley Adler.
Up next, auditing Elon Musk's charitable contributions. When America in the Morning returns after these messages. Welcome back. You're with America in the Morning. Choice Hotels International, the owner of brands including Radisson and Quality Inn, has scrapped their nearly year-long pursuit of Wyndham Hotels and Resorts after Wyndham shareholders balked at the deal. Choice originally approached Wyndham 11 months ago, tendering an offer of about $7.2 billion, but the stockholders said the deal is low premium. They had issues with the combined debt of the new company and also could have antitrust concerns. Choice Hotels operates nearly 7,500 hotels and resorts in 46 countries. Wyndham's brands also include Days Inn and Ramada. CNBC's Jessica Ettinger is back with Tuesday Business.
Wall Street opens this morning after a mixed day for the markets yesterday. The Dow was up, the S&P 500 index and the Nasdaq, each with modest losses.
All that I think is happening right now is that investors are saying, I don't want out of the market, but I'm not going to be silly enough to go into things that are very obviously crowded trades, very obviously overbought.
SoFi's Liz Young on CNBC. Investors this morning are waiting for the latest on inflation. The Consumer Price Index for February out at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. The consensus forecast is for it to have ticked slightly higher last month. Watch Oracle shares today. It reported better than expected quarterly earnings last night after the closing bell. Bitcoin hit a fresh record high yesterday, pushing above $72,000 before pulling back. Boeing reportedly facing a Department of Justice criminal investigation into that January door panel blowout on an Alaska Airlines Boeing 737 MAX 9. This after settling with the DOJ a few years ago in a different criminal case over the 737 MAXs and promising to follow the law.
Had to do with the development of the 737 MAX, whether or not Boeing withheld information that it should have revealed to airlines, to customers, etc. Ultimately, this settlement was reached in 2021 for $2.5 billion, as well as certain stipulations in terms of how Boeing would conduct itself over the next 3 years.
CNBC's Phil LeBeau.
Elon Musk's charitable foundation is under new scrutiny.
Well, Tesla's CEO Elon Musk, like many billionaires, they give stock to the foundation, take the tax breaks. But the Musk Foundation hasn't been donating enough of its money to charity, according to an analysis by the New York Times.
He put in about $7 billion worth of Tesla stock. When you put money into a foundation that you run, tax law requires that every foundation give away about 5% of its assets every year. That's to keep you from just stockpiling money in your foundation and not helping the world. And so in this case, the Musk Foundation was required to give $350 million in 2022, which is the last year for which we have numbers. And they only gave away about 160. It's not very common. There's no immediate penalty for it.
New York Times investigative reporter David Farenthold on CNBC. On today's watch list, we get the latest read on inflation. As we mentioned, the CPI out at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, the Consumer Price Index. We get earnings today from Kohl's. Boeing reports February plane orders and deliveries. It's Equal Pay Day, the day into the new year that women have to work until to make the same pay men made in the same job in just 12 months last year. Tonight's Mega Millions jackpot, $735 million.
That's a pile of cash. CNBC's Jessica Ettinger. Congressional efforts to keep AM radio in every new vehicle. An update on that story and more when America in the Morning continues after these messages. This is America in the Morning. A federal judge in Texas is blocking the U.S. Labor Relations Board rule that would make it easier for workers at McDonald's, Burger King, and some other big U.S. companies to unionize. Correspondent Donna Warder reports.
The National Labor Relations Board is considering its next step after a judge blocked a new rule that would have made it easier for millions of workers to form unions at big companies. The rule was to have taken effect today. Under the current rule, a big company isn't considered a joint employee if most of its employees are working for a franchisee. The new rule that was put on hold said companies could be considered joint employees if they had the ability to control either directly or indirectly at least one condition of employment, such as wages, benefits, hours, or scheduling. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce and other business groups sued the NLRB in federal court, arguing that the new rule would make companies liable for workers they don't employ at workplaces they don't own. I'm Donna Warder.
Citing public safety concerns and the importance for people to get information. 2 senators from Maine are the latest to join an effort in Congress to pass federal legislation to keep AM radio in every new car made. Correspondent Haya Panjwani reports.
A group of bipartisan lawmakers are trying to save AM radio. Politicians are trying to pass a federal law that requires AM radios to be included in every new car. They say it's critical to public safety, especially in more rural parts of the U.S. The proposed law, called the AM for Every Vehicle Act, was proposed in Congress last year, but in recent weeks it's found a new wave of co-sponsors. Now there are enough co-sponsors to pass the bill in the House, and the Senate only needs a few more sponsors as well. If passed, the Department of Transportation would require all new motor vehicles to have devices that can access AM broadcast stations. It applies to vehicles manufactured in the U.S., imported into the country, or shipped in interstate commerce. I'm Haya Panjwani.
Heard on hundreds of great AM and FM radio stations across the country, America in the Morning for Tuesday, March 12th, 2024 is produced by Jeff McKay. Senior producer Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour.
Is retirement spending on the chopping block under a second Trump administration? I'm Pamela Furr.
More testimony in the trial for a father of a Michigan school shooter. I'm Clayton Neville.
The U.S. to pledge more support as the situation in Haiti worsens.
Peter Navarro, an ex-Trump advisor, has been ordered to report to federal prison for contempt of Congress. I'm Sue Aller.
The state of Georgia will resume executions next week after a 4-year pause. I'm Haya Panjwani.
School bus tragedy in Illinois and pink slips at the RNC will have those stories.
A new survey says while most teens felt better when they went without smartphones, many of them won't give the phones up. I'm Shelley Adler.
Back after these messages. This is America in the Morning. AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy checks on where those spring-like temperatures might be found today.
A good part of the nation is looking at quieter weather today. There will be a lingering storm just off the northeast coast, causing a few rain and snow showers in New England. And from that, there will also still be some strong winds through Maine into New Hampshire. Despite that storm, afternoon temperatures will still be 5 to 10 degrees above their historical average. The winds will make it feel much colder. Farther south in the eastern Great Lakes into the mid-Atlantic, it will be a warmer day by quite a bit. With less wind across the northeast states, it will feel even milder. Highs through the area will be in the 50s in much of New York, into the 60s and 70s from Michigan into Ohio, Virginia, with 70s and 80s across the southeast. Many of these locations will be 5 to 15 degrees above their historical average, and with the abundant sunshine expected, we're looking at a nice afternoon. That trend started in the plains yesterday and will continue today. Minneapolis, Minnesota broke another record high yesterday, making it the 8th time this year for that to happen. While it will not reach a record today, afternoon temperatures still around the 50s, 60s, and 70s through the region will be above the historical average by 15 to 25 degrees. That'll be from eastern Montana into the Dakotas, Nebraska, Iowa, and even Wisconsin. Even the southern plains will be warm this afternoon by as much as 5 to 15 degrees with highs in the 70s and 80s. Also in the southern plains, there'll be a little humidity shifting northward, and that will result in some afternoon thunderstorms in parts of Missouri that will quickly expand at night. That's the weather across America. Richmond, Virginia is going to see plenty of sunshine today with a comfortable high of 72. Rock Springs, Wyoming will have a chillier day with a rain or snow shower late in the day and a high of 43. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
Remember, you can follow us everywhere you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. President Biden unveiled his election year budget for 2025, which calls for $5.5 trillion in tax increases by raising the tax rates on the wealthiest Americans and corporations, while spending over $7 trillion on the nation's defense, including money to be earmarked for the southern border, benefit programs, affordable housing, and student debt cancellation, among other proposals. The tax increases would also be used to shore up Social Security, which faces solvency issues as soon as 2034, and it was that very program that led both the president and his GOP rival in the 2024 election, Donald Trump, to square off on the topic, with the former president getting pushback from Biden on the idea of cutting Social Security and Medicare spending. Pamela Furr has more on the story.
Trump called into CNBC's Squawk Box show and was asked how he plans to resolve the long-term solvency problems of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
Mr. President, it seems like something has to be done, or else we're going to be stuck at 120% of debt to GDP forever.
So first of all, there is a lot you can do in terms of entitlements, in terms of cutting, and in terms of also the theft and the bad management of entitlements, tremendous bad management of entitlements. There's tremendous amounts of things and numbers of things you can do.
Now, President Biden, during a speech on Monday in New Hampshire, pushed back on the notion.
If anyone tries to cut Social Security, Medicare, or raise retirement age again, I will stop them. Working people built this country. They pay more into Social Security than millionaires and billionaires do. It's not fair.
Biden's annual budget proposal was released Monday as well, calling for shoring up Medicare by raising taxes on incomes above $400,000 and raising a surtax on net investment income. Republicans are more divided on how to address the programs, with many House GOP lawmakers supporting a budget that calls for lowering spending by raising the age a person can receive Social Security, among other things. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul.
We have to talk about all the spending, including the entitlements, or we're going to ruin the country and ruin our currency.
I'm Pamela Furr.
The trial is moving forward for the father of a convicted school shooter in Michigan. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports on the precedent-setting courtroom proceedings.
Ethan Crumbley pleaded guilty to 4 counts of murder and other charges after the November 2021 deadly shooting at Oxford High School. His mother, Jennifer Crumbley, was convicted of involuntary manslaughter earlier this year, and her husband and Ethan's father, James Crumbley, facing the same charges in a trial that's moved pretty fast. It's possible the jury could get the case this week. The Crumbleys accused of ignoring warning signs that potentially could have prevented the school shooting. Yesterday, school counselors testified about a meeting they had with Ethan and his parents hours before the shooting. Drawings and other notes were collected by the counselors.
You felt that what was on the paper was not appropriate for school, is that correct?
Yep, I would agree with that.
But that it wasn't in and of itself concerning?
Yes.
And that you didn't see it as a threat to anybody?
That is correct.
You didn't see a correlation of violence with the drawings on the paper?
I did not know.
Ultimately, Ethan returned to class that day.
At the end of the meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Partly because he wanted to?
Yes.
And partly because his parents had to go to work?
That's what I was told, yes.
And with all of this, all of the knowledge that you had on November 30th of 2021 at approximately 10:52 a.m., you did not feel that he was a threat to anyone, and you didn't feel that you had reasonable suspicion to look in his backpack?
No, because you have to remember, I knew very little of what we all know today. So when we're looking at the big picture today, I knew a fraction of what we all know now.
While parents have faced liability in past school shooting cases, the Crumbleys trial's setting a precedent surrounding criminal responsibility for parents whose kids shoot up their schools. I'm Clayton Neville.
In Haiti, gangs are roaming the streets of the nation's capital city, Port-au-Prince, and the U.S. has airlifted all non-essential staff from the American embassy. Violence and poverty have become commonplace. Correspondent Charles de Ledesma has an update.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken is scheduled to meet with Caribbean leaders in Jamaica as part of an urgent push to solve Haiti's spiraling crisis.
A political crisis, escalating violence, unrest. This has created an untenable situation for the Haitian people. And we all know that urgent action is needed on both the political and security tracks.
pressure grows on Prime Minister Ariel Henry to resign or agree to a transitional government. It's not clear if Henry, locked out of his own country after surging violence at home, would attend the closed-door meeting, which was organised by members of a regional trade bloc known as CARICOM.
What we've seen in recent days again should remind us that the already challenging and difficult security situation has now deteriorated even further and makes the multinational support mission even more important than ever.
Assistant Secretary for Western Hemisphere Affairs, Brian Nichols, writes on X, formerly Twitter, the international community must work together with Haitians towards a peaceful political transition. Gunmen have burned police stations, closed the main international airports, and raided the country's two biggest prisons, releasing more than 4,000 inmates. Scores of people have been killed, and more than 15,000 made homeless after fleeing neighbourhoods raided by gangs. Food and water are dwindling as stands and stores selling to impoverished Haitians run out of goods. The main port in Port-au-Prince remains closed, stranding dozens of containers with critical supplies. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
When we return on America in the Morning, prison time for former Trump aide, and meet AI's Grok. Just a couple of the stories we're covering next. We're back after these messages. I'm John Trout. Welcome back here with America in the Morning. Former Trump White House aide Peter Navarro has been ordered to report to a Miami prison. Correspondent Sue Adler has details.
He claimed executive privilege, but the judge said no and ordered Peter Navarro, a former Trump White House advisor, to report to federal prison on March 19th to serve out a 4-month sentence for his 2-count conviction of criminal contempt of Congress. He was found guilty earlier this year for refusing to cooperate with a subpoena related to the White House committee investigating the January 6 attack on the U.S. Capitol. Navarro is appealing, arguing that senior presidential advisors may not be subject to congressional subpoenas.
United States versus Peter Navarro has turned out to be a very important landmark constitutional case that is going to resolve important issues about the constitutional separation of powers.
Navarro's lawyer, John Rowley, is hoping to keep his client out of jail during the appeal process.
This is an important constitutional issue. We've always understood that this case was going to have to be resolved at the D.C. Circuit.
I'm Sue Adler.
The state of Georgia will be resuming executions later this month. Correspondent Haya Panjwani reports.
Georgia halted executions in April 2021 when the state attorney general's office entered an agreement with attorneys who represent people on death row. The break was caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, but court proceedings still continued during this time, so people on death row continued to become eligible for executions as they exhausted their appeals. On March 20th, Willie James Pye, a 59-year-old man, will be put to death in the state's first execution in 4 years. He was convicted of killing his former girlfriend and other crimes in 1993. I'm Haya Panjwani.
All 3 children on a school bus in Illinois were killed when it veered into oncoming traffic and collided with a tractor-trailer. It happened in the small town of Rushville on Route 24, a major thoroughfare that connects Illinois with Kansas City. Both the school bus and big rig were engulfed in flames after the crash, which also killed the driver of the school bus and the person driving the 18-wheeler. Chicago's WGN-TV reports that on board the bus, 2 boys, both aged 3 and a 5-year-old girl, died. The cause of the crash remains under investigation. There were a large number of staff layoffs Monday at the Republican National Committee. Politico is reporting that new leadership, which includes Donald Trump's daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, wasted no time in purging as many as 60 staffers, many of whom worked in the political communications and data departments, including 5 members of the senior RNC staff. Advisors to former President Trump called the RNC's structure bloated and bureaucratic, and the organization purportedly has cash issues as they head into the 2024 election cycle. An American man is going to prison in Germany for the murder of a fellow American. Correspondent Rita Foley reports.
An American man has been sentenced to life in prison in Germany for attacking 2 American women near the famous Neuschwanstein Castle. One of the women died. It happened in June. Prosecutors have said the suspect met the 2 women by chance on a hiking path and apparently forced one of them to the ground and tried to undress her. When the other woman tried to help, there was a scuffle, and he allegedly pushed her down a steep slope. Prosecutors say the man then strangled the other woman until she was unconscious and raped her before pushing her down the slope as well. She died in a hospital. Family members identified the women as recent graduates of the University of Illinois. I'm Rita Foley.
Elon Musk has sued a company he helped co-found because he didn't think they should make AI a profitable venture. So now he's got his own AI project. Chuck Palm has that in today's Tech News.
Elon Musk said in a tweet on Monday that his artificial intelligence startup group, called Grok, would be released as an open source model. Releasing software as open source gives other programmers an opportunity to integrate the code with their own software or suggest and make improvements at no charge. Musk filed a lawsuit against Microsoft-backed OpenAI, which he co-founded in 2015. Musk filed a lawsuit earlier this year saying that they turned the code into a for-profit entity and had abandoned the open-source model. While some believe open-source technology can help speed up innovations, other experts have warned that open-source code could be used by terrorists to create chemical weapons or even super-intelligent AI that might be beyond human control. Bitcoin reached yet another new high yesterday at 72,000, making it the biggest cryptocurrency surge with no sign of slowing down. Ethereum also up 5% at over $4,000. Leave us a comment at allthetoptech.tech. I'm Chuck Palm.
Tuesday Sports is in on America in the Morning with our Robert Workman.
NBA Monday, the Nuggets rally past the Raptors, 125-119. Nikola Jokic with a game-high 35 points and his 21st triple-double of the season, second most in the association. Mavericks ran past the Bulls, 127-92, a team effort for Coach Jason Kidd.
I thought everyone did a great job of taking care of the ball, but also I thought our passing was at its best tonight. Everybody was unselfish, knowing who was open, and then also finding the bigs in the paint.
Luka Doncic with his 7th straight triple-double and 17th overall, and Dallas center Daniel Gafford went 9 for 9. He's now made his last 28 consecutive shots. That's the most since the NBA started keeping track of that back in the 90s. Suns got 37 from Kevin Durant, 88 from their big three, and came back to beat the Cavaliers. The league-leading Celtics snuffed out the Blazers, Warriors whipped the Spurs, and the Pistons swatted the Hornets. Houston, Connecticut, and Purdue remain 1, 2, and 3 in the final regular season college basketball poll. March Madness, James Madison won the Sun Belt title, and Samford captured the Southern Conference crown. 5 more conference finals tonight. Hockey, the Kings blanked the Islanders, the Jets shut out the Capitals, Rangers nipped the Devils, and the Blues blasted the Bruins. Former Vikings quarterback Kirk Cousins has agreed to a 4-year deal with the Falcons worth $180 million. Gardner Minshew will leave the Colts and take a 2-year offer from the Raiders, while the Patriots bring in former Washington backup Jacoby Brissett on a 1-year deal, and Tyrod Taylor shifts from the Giants over to the Jets. Running backs, Saquon Barkley to the Eagles, Josh Jacobs to the Packers, Austin Eckler to the Commanders, and the Bengals add Zach Moss and cut Joe Mixon. That's Tuesday Sports.
Robert Workman with sports. Removing this causes teens to feel better. The answer may surprise you, and we'll have that next. America in the Morning, back after these messages. America in the Morning continues. A new survey says most teens felt better when they went without smartphones. However, as correspondent Shelley Adler reports, many of them simply won't give the phones up.
Nearly 3/4 of U.S. teens say they feel happy or peaceful when they don't have their phones. That's according to a new report from the Pew Research Center. The survey also found that despite the positive associations with going phone-free, most teens have not limited their phone or social media use. The report comes as policymakers and children's advocates are growing increasingly concerned with teens' relationships with their phones and social media. Most teens said the benefits of of having a smartphone outweigh the harms for people their age. I'm Shelley Adler.
The 1,000-mile Iditarod race is underway in Alaska, and 2 sled dogs have died as temperatures and wind chills have plummeted along the course route. Correspondent Ed Donahue reports.
2 dogs died over the weekend during Alaska's annual Iditarod sled dog race. Both dogs, a 2-year-old male named Bog and a 4-year-old male named George, collapsed. They were on separate teams. Further tests will be done to determine why they died. Their mushers, Isaac Tieford and Hunter Keefe, both voluntarily quit the race. The last dog to die during the 1,000-mile race was in 2019. People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals has been a long critic of the Iditarod and is calling for the race to end. Senior Vice President Colleen O'Brien says dogs are forced to run until their bodies break down. Also, the human winner can get a trophy while the dogs get an icy grave. And all 5 of the 38 mushers have left the race. A winner is expected by the middle of the week in Nome. I'm Ed Donahue.
Yesterday, we brought you the winners from Sunday's Academy Awards ceremony, a relatively low-key event. There were some controversial moments. Kevin Carr has this follow-up.
Sunday's Oscar broadcast was watched by 19.5 million viewers, up from last year's post-pandemic high of 18.8. However, the show was not without controversy. One of the biggest was Jonathan Glazer's acceptance speech for Best International Feature, the Holocaust drama The Zone of Interest.
Our film shows where dehumanization leads at its worst. It shaped all of our past and present. Right now, we stand here as men who refute their Jewishness and the Holocaust being hijacked by an occupation which has led to conflict for so many innocent people.
Some objected to the political statement, and reporting the following day was also criticized for selectively editing his speech. On the lighter side, host Jimmy Kimmel responded live to a social media post.
Has there ever been a worse host than Jimmy Kimmel at the Oscars? Well, thank you, President Trump. Thank you for watching. I'm surprised you're still... Isn't it past your jail time?
Donald Trump and Kimmel have publicly traded barbs in the past. The ceremony ended early, partly because of Al Pacino's apparent rush to announce Best Picture.
And may I see Oppenheimer?
Similarly, in 1985, Laurence Olivier announced Best Picture without listing the nominations.
I'm here to present the Best Picture Award, and the winner for this is Amadeus.
However, in a statement on Monday, Pacino said this was the producer's choice due to the time constraints and the nominees getting an earlier spotlight. I'm Kevin Carr.
America in the Morning for Tuesday, March 12th, 2024 is produced by Jeff McKay, senior producer Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.